to handle this, how to accept, how to work with the opposite sex, because that has its own problems. And as you would know, unless we are disciplined, the sexual harassment and things like that, which again can become a problem in certain places. An youngster who joins to work has to work with people who perhaps have been working for a long time, whether it is 20 years, 30 years. The youngsters these days are very different from probably my own childhood. I take it people here is a mix of about 50s, 60s or less than that, and also age group of 25 and 30s. Yeah? Okay. So you would know that you have your own, if you think or reflect on your own childhood or your college days, and then subsequently now thinking about how these are, the youngsters are not used to keeping quiet. They would like to ask questions, they would like to know why a particular thing is being done the way it is done. So they can be challenging, they can be demanding on the person. Now that can be seen as intimidatory for the elderly, experienced person, and it can be seen as being arrogant, and also maybe to the extent of being overconfident or whatever. So that brings with it its own problems as to how to adjust with that. Now there can't be a uniform workforce where only people are 25s and 30s. So there are people of various age groups, various the languages and specializations. Perhaps here is a group, a homogeneous group, but by and large you have a heterogeneous group, which can make the adjustment itself quite a challenge. Also the individual himself, again we are talking about human beings here. When we talk about work alone, it's very difficult to just bring out only the occupational side of it, because he also has his personal side, and we all know that what we go through in our personal life to some extent gets reflected in our work. If you have had a bad day at home, you had an argument with your wife, or you had a problem with your son or daughter, whoever it is, or not being well, and clearly you would find it difficult to concentrate at your workplace too, because we are all human beings. We can't be like the computers or the laptops, so we have to do that also. So the people who are in that age group have their own responsibilities. It could be their own their relationships, their adjustments with their parents, the responsibilities of having to take care of them. So along with that, the expectations of their and the goals also, which could well be pretty challenging. So the individual himself will be going through his transition, in his life. So when he is having to adjust, having to be in a place that itself, most people are able to adjust, but when they don't, very well, they are either having difficulties at work. It could well mean easily getting angry, irritable with people, shouting, screaming. It can happen. One thing which I forgot to mention is about the ladies, the female workforce. Obviously they have their own, starting their family, adjusting to their mother-in-law and the other issues at home, and literally it's about not just working here, but having to go home and then starting another shift. So these bring with it challenges to the individual as to how to adjust, how to cope with that. Now with respect to the more experienced, they are again the people who are, I might be wrong, I'm just thinking, as I said, from the medical. If you are adjusted to a particular routine of having to work with people, you have your set pattern, and that's human. You want to work with your comfort zones, and you don't want to be pushed into doing that anything more. So they are happy with a set of ideas. They are happy perhaps to working with their, whatever has been there over a long period of time, unless there is a challenge. Unless there are demands to learn something new or innovative, they might be a little resistant to change. I might be wrong, perhaps we can take it up during the discussion point of view. But the world is such that we all have to keep changing, keep innovating, or keep adapting to ourselves the requirements, so as to make us much more resourceful, being able to help the organization. So the elderly people also have that, and clearly when we talk about people coming into their 50s and 60s, we all know that there are a lot of other changes also happening. Now, biological changes, okay, with respect to the health. We've already talked about the diabetes and the hypertensions, which brings with it lots of issues with respect to being able to concentrate, memory perhaps. We all know that more than, as of now, 5% of the people who are aged 65 and above in our country. Now, that's actually going to increase, probably reach about 20% in about 15 to 20 years. So, you have a big chunk which is young, and also a big chunk which is more than 65 and 70 years. So, which brings with it what you and me would probably call the generation gap. Now, when we actually talk about generation gap, it starts at home rather than being at workplace. When we are in our the earlier days, we had people getting married and having children probably much younger, 25, 26. A lot of people had already had children, but nowadays there are a lot of people who are delaying. Okay, I certainly, again, from the doctors I have seen a lot of people where career takes the focus. They would like to settle, they would like to start. So having a family much later means actually the age of the child when born and the age of the parents itself, it could well be in their mid 30s, or even there are people even into their 40s. So that actually starts at home, where many a times it's the difficulty of adjusting to or thinking how a child can think. So likewise, when you think about in the work scenario, if you have an age difference which is likely to become more and more pronounced in the many years in the future, you have definitely that it's not just about, we are talking about 5 or 10 years, perhaps 30s and 40 years too, which can be quite challenging for the people. We'll come back to this part a little later. Now, when we talk about the organizations itself, we all know the organization is very much, for an organization to be able to sustain, it has to be very professional, it has to be competitive in the modern day field, and you have to update your knowledge, plus you also have to be able to retain your staff. You don't want to have that high attrition rates. So you also have to have a good working relationship which encourages the person, which brings out the potential or the best in your employee. Yes, it also has its own responsibilities towards its stakeholders or the shareholders who are there, and so a company has to succeed. Now, when an organization has to have, obviously has to change or adapt its changes, now they are thinking about in one aspect, which is to succeed and to retain their the high standards what they have set themselves. So which means they may have to sometimes take hard decisions. Now that trickles down to how competent the staff are, and one of the criteria which becomes topmost is the retirement age, whether it is 60, 65, whatever. And there are many people who are very much productive even in their 60s or 65, or on the other hand there are people who may not be productive also, but are loyal to the companies. So for the organization to be successful, somewhere along the line, the tough decisions when it is taken, it can have a negative influence on the group and also the morale of the group. Now, how it could be something which can be useful or usefully done is to involve the people. Do you all have something like appraisals on a regular basis? Right. What about the retirement age? Do you have anything?
We have written it down as 60, but there are people who are beyond that and still working in productive.
Right. In the medical field, as of now, we don't. Of course, the medical colleges or the hospitals, the governments have about 60, which is likely to be raised to even up to 70. Maybe they are going to bring in, like in the US and UK, where every year you have to prove your competency. You have to have a professional exam which has to be done to show that you are good enough to be able to, for being employed, and you can do the work what is required. So that is something which is worth looking into on a regular basis, where the person is assessed. Now, with respect to continuing with the organizations also have to again deal with these conflicts which can crop up from time to time. Am I talking something about which is relevant or not so relevant? Huh? Okay, because I don't want to be too off the topic and then make you. One thing again I forgot to tell you, we as psychiatrists, we are taught to listen. So which means we are on the other side of the chair or the table, where we again hear people talking about half an hour, 40 minutes or 1 hour, whatever it is. But when we get an opportunity to talk, we never lose that. So we can continue to talk for hours together. So you'll have to stop me wherever you feel, and certainly please ask questions. You don't have to, feel that you're breaking my, no problems at all. Wherever you feel that is something against or you want to contribute, please feel free to. Okay, no problems at all. So that's something which, so the organization has to adjust. Now, something which he mentioned about earlier. Now, I am part of 3 or 4 organizations. One is Manasa, and the 3 other hospitals which I am associated with. Now, what I see is, as an organization, all these hospitals, including St. Martha's, which I am a full-time psychiatrist there, are going through their transitions. That phase is now people who have set standards, now subsequently almost like reached a stage of stagnation, want to make changes because they still have to compete. Now, when certain ideas were discussed, first thing was there is a lot of opposition to that. There is a lot of resistance to that. 2 or 3 of the 4, one of them is a big hospital, which is Martha's, so which is run by Good Shepherd sisters, and subsequently you have a management, and actually the medical force is just very small percentage, 10% or so. But for any changes to happen, there is a lot of difficulty, and the doctors are very much resistant to that change. Yes, but frequent and an ongoing dialogue process between the doctors and the management, and finally there are certain positives coming out of it. But on the other hand, the other 3 setups which I see is private, it's family-owned businesses. Now, something which I have seen, because I have worked with, again from a personal experience, I've worked with the founders or the fathers of these companies. Okay, and then subsequently I am required to now continue my association with the second generation too. Okay, now as you would understand, each generation has its own set point, and clearly they are comfortable, and we also are comfortable. We have that wavelength. Okay, we are comfortable, they know us, and the consultation process can be there. But what I see in those 3 is the new ideas, young blood, which is coming in, which is putting in their thoughts, ideas, wanting to take it to the next level, which is very welcome. However, first of all, it may not really match with the people. Okay, that's something which I have seen. So, the age difference. Now, the second generation is almost like 20 or 15 years, in some instance about 10 years younger than me. So, what it brings is, first of all, there's some degree of insecurity. Okay, we are following certain aspects. Now, would that have to change? It took some time for them to understand that we are part of the organization, and after certain discussions and all that, so clearly that our service or ideas, what has the institute stood for, it was very much recognized and respected, and subsequently when we are part of that consultation process, it was much easier to bring in that changes whatever was thought of. So, it was a two-way learning process. We having to learn the new management, what they have ideas, and being able to reciprocate, and the second thing for them also having to value and being able to accept that there is a workforce which is not young in that way, but at the same time have their values and contribution to that. Now, that's something which we have seen, which brought in quite a bit of unrest and quite a bit of what should I say, the conflicts, but which have been successfully resolved after following our own ideas, and which they were able to take in. So, that's something which can again as an organization which can come in. Now, when we talk about the age difference, which was the topic which as a professional, as a barrier. Now, I actually feel, this is where I do believe, that first of all, age should not be a barrier at all, because we all know that comes with the age, the experience of not just being able to deal with whatever is there professionally, but also being able to overcome those barriers also. Okay, because we would have learned in our journey not just executing products, but also worked with a different type of people who work with us. So, it's much more than just projects, it's about the people with who we work with. So, at some degree of openness, being able to come down to that level, when I say level, it's a responsibility on both sides. If we are able to, again, just going back on the cricket point of view, whenever there is a selection of an Indian team, first thing which is the headlines or which makes is, should the team be picked on youth or experience? And we always have a photo of Tendulkar saying that should he be picked for the team or not. Now, there are a lot of people who would say he brings in experience, why not he should be there to